I think that the visa issue is, I think, ultimately going to be a very positive thing for or for all of Africa, really. I hope that one of the changes that they make as well is to allow for more inter-African travel. I think we need to facilitate that. I think that we need to...
Interesting that very interesting, right?
Because we have that in Europe.
Yes.
So in Europe, if I land in Paris,
Shenzhen
Shenzhen region, yeah.
Yes.
If I can land in Paris and I can go to Italy if I want to, how come I can't land in Ghana? You tell me, oh my gosh, things are great in Kenya. Why can't I just pop over to Kenya? And then can't go down to Angola if I want to.
So we've had these conversations, like even here in the studio before, and the African Union had been working on something on, actually not the African Union, this one is within, as far as freedom of movement is concerned, within the East African community. It also still has issues like, for example, if I'm going from Kenya to Tanzania, which is right next, if I'm flying, I still have to have a passport. Like when I'm flying, they've started implementing this new visa where you have an option of you can get just a Kenyan visa or you can get an East African visa that Tanzania has not quite, signed up for it, but currently, because it's kind of voluntary, currently you can go to Kenya, Uganda, I think, and Rwanda. There are those three countries that you can go. Burundi, but eventually, the plan... No, Burundi will always do whatever Tanzania says. But so Burundi is not in yet. But they're planning to have that. And people have been requesting one for Africa. Not only movement, but also free air transport. Right now, if you're an airline, if you're Kenya Airways, your flight has either to be originating from Nairobi or going to Nairobi. Like if you're, for example, in Nigeria, you're in Lagos, you cannot pick up people and take them to Ivory Coast.
And just imagine like how that would be if in America we had to deal with that logistically. So I came here, I came from Virginia through DC to come here to the show.
Correct.
Imagine if I had to go get a visa for DC, then a visa for Maryland, to shoot through there.
Yes.
I mean, you see, we wouldn't have the interview in the way we're having it right now. And think about all the businesses that aren't able to collaborate the right way, the connections that are never made, simply because we've artificially restricted travel between the different countries of Africa.
All right. A lot of gems being dropped here. There's someone, a war wearer, is saying, this man is telling too many truths.
And speaking of truths, there's a question that has been asked on YouTube.
There was a question on YouTube that was pretty much... does he have protection? Because these are some very bold statements. So, since he came from Virginia, I think I know what the answer is. Yeah. What is that thing that they carry that they're allowed to hide? And it's an equalizer, and it has a brother.
Hey.
Concealed carry.
Okay, all right. Let's go. You're going to talk about your security later on, but let's read a few comments here. Washeke says the West wants the status quo to continue so they can continue robbing Africa of its resources. And Slayoud War is saying, I'm loving the candid conversation going on. Washeke then further says, not only natural resources, but brain drain as well. Look at how the best and brightest are given scholarships to study abroad. Now, and I know, like in this interview, we're going to be going a bit all over the place. You talked about Africa, like as an incentive for people who want to invest in a business or are looking into the future. You talked about the workforce of Africa. Forget about even education.
Sorry.
You talked about the workforce of Africa being not just, like a labor mill for unskilled labor, but you talked about how skilled the African labor force is. I want you to talk about that a bit.
Well, let's talk about the level of college education that exists in Africa right now. I believe it has exceeded in many countries 20% of Africans in those countries in many countries have had a college education. Projected is by the end of this century, hopefully we're all around to see that. Go science. But we will be seeing roughly 25 to 30% of the continent of Africa at the current rates will be college educated. Now, different degrees, different levels of degrees, but they'll have a college education. Africa's population is projected to go to 4 billion, but depending on the estimates.
Wow.
If we could just do the math here real quick, that means that there's going to be over 1 billion college-educated Africans. That's the workforce that you're going to be drawing from. 1 billion.
Wow. Okay.
They can't drain that many brains, no matter how hard they try.
Okay, all right. That's interesting.
Wow.
You know, like, and then we're gonna get back to talking about the education too. But let me just read so many comments here coming as we're having the conversation. Washeke says lobbyist is equal to legal corruption.
Yep.
And then Slay says Africa Uncensored did a series on Kenyan debt. It's wild. Africa Uncensored is a very interesting YouTube page that I'm going to share with you. You know, they have very interesting content from an independent journalist coming from Kenya, so it's very educative. Also, land issues and all these other things that you might want to know before you get there. And then I can see here Esther Mulusa is saying, where do you source your construction materials? Do you import them or use local West African resources? For example, in Kenya, we have untapped Vihiga granite and even marble, but yet we import Italian marble. So talk to Esther.
All right, yeah. So for the foundation, as much as we can, we source from West Africa because the cost is better. For certain types of rebar that is sourced from out of the country, we hope to have more steel mills in Africa at some point. Mm-hmm. As far as marble, things of that nature, we do grab some of the Italian marble at times, but that's just because we're selling to kind of rich people, and throwing Italian on there helps our stuff sell a little bit better. We are always looking, though, particularly with our lower cost houses that are still extraordinarily nice, we are looking for ways that we can provide the highest quality by sourcing local materials. And for us, that's not us trying to help out the local economy, but I think it's just really good business. The more stuff that we source locally, the more quality control we have over it, the more reliable the more reliability that we have that we're going to get the stuff on time at the way we want. So we do try as much as we can to do things locally. I'd like to see more of the appliances manufactured in Africa. I'd like to see manufacturing come in because, again, our appliances, a lot of those are sourced from Asia and from Central America. So I'd like to see more manufacturing in West Africa. There's absolutely no reason it can't be done. We're just waiting for it to be done.
Okay, all right, that's interesting. And then Slay here says it's mind-boggling how a flight within Africa can cost roughly $2,000.
Yeah.
And that's very common. And sometimes it's countries that are next to each other. And then Washeke says, as much as African countries are free, the colonial masters are still pulling strings, and that's one of the reasons for closed borders. Gaddafi tried, and see what happened. So